A former New York Jets star has hinted at a return, making a reunion with the team that drafted him and saw him become an NFL star. Meanwhile, this would be a very interesting move by Darren Mougey, as it does not totally fit what the New York Jets are doing here. However, this player, Jamal Adams, does have a connection with Aaron Glenn already, which very likely boosts his chances. So we're going to break it all down. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jets Digest. It's Chris and Matt, and we're going to jump right into things as always. Guys, if you're not subscribed to Jets Digest, what are you doing? You're part of that 70%. Matt's looking up at it in disgust, and he's ashamed. And you should be, because we have Jets videos every single day that you do not want to miss out on. Bunch of content, bunch of fun stuff happening on the channel. Make sure to subscribe. We have some fun news coming out soon as well. Look, this is also fun news, because a former New York Jet, Matt, who left on horrible terms, well, he's talked about wanting to return and has taken a lot of the blame for this situation. As Jamal Adams said, I would love to be back with the Jets and obviously finish it the right way. Man, that would be a dream come true, just to patch up that relationship and kind of make it right. Then saying, I would just come in as a seasoned veteran, give game to the young cats and help in any way, shape, or form I can. I know I can still play football. I'm healthy, and I know I can impact the game in a lot of ways. I just need that fair opportunity to come in and show what I can do. Now, Matt, one of the crazier parts about Jamal Adams is he's 29 years old. It feels like a lifetime ago that he was on the New York Jets, but in reality, it really was not that long ago that he was a Jet. But since then, we've seen Jamal Adams on multiple different teams, namely the Seahawks, the Titans, and the Lions. And when the Jets traded him away, no one could have expected that sort of drop in production after a bit. It didn't happen instantly, but there was that drop in production. And at the same time, when the Jets drafted him, he felt like he was going to be the next great defensive back not long after Darrelle Revis retired. So this is definitely a weird situation, as Jamal Adams was the face, the heart, the blood, the sweat, and the tears of the Jets. We loved him. He was such a successful draft pick. And then things took a wrong turn, and now Jamal Adams' career did as well, and we're in an interesting spot where he's still a free agent.
Chris, you said it perfectly in the intro when you said this player does not fit what the New York Jets are trying to put together. We've seen Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey be picking up young guys for this locker room to build a new culture. And frankly, Jamal Adams, while does have that dog mentality, and I'm sure he would fight on every single snap, he's not a young guy and doesn't perfectly fit what this New York Jets team is building. Now, he does make a good point when he says he would be a good veteran leader for the locker room, but based off the signings, we've gotten the much older Josh Reynolds, but outside of that, the New York Jets really have not been looking for older players. So that either tells us that there's another older veteran out there that they're targeting, or Aaron Glenn wants to be the veteran leadership in the locker room as the player who, or maybe he's not a player anymore, but as a guy who has a ton of NFL experience, and he wants to be that one voice, which also would make sense. Although, just like you said, Jamal Adams, obviously very, very good football player for the New York Jets. Drafted him 6th overall, and he was a first-team All-Pro, so that's what you're looking for out of your top 10 picks. Very talented player. Didn't work out in Seattle, mostly due to those injuries that he had, the concussions, and then I think it was a knee injury that had him out, a groin injury as well. The dude just couldn't stay on the field. The number one ability is availability, and Jamal Adams, doesn't matter how good you are, how fast you can run. If you're going to pull your groin every time you step on the field, you just can't play this game of football. But the number one reason is frankly, he's too old for this roster. As much as we did like having him on the New York Jets, when he was on the New York Jets, it seems like what the past regimes would do of picking up a big name, picking up a name who would certainly make a splash in the social media atmosphere. You know, Woody Johnson loves his social media splashes. We're hoping that he continues, Woody Johnson being that is, continues to take a backseat to Aaron Glenn's decisions. We're seeing Aaron Glenn wants to move in silence, where we know Woody Johnson wants the limelight to be right on the New York Jets. So far, it's been Aaron Glenn's way. I want to see that continue because it's different from what the New York Jets have done in the past. And in the past, we've had nothing but non-playoff seasons. So let's do something different and let's actually have meaningful change. And unfortunately, because I really do like the guy and like the player, unfortunately, that means we should have zero interest in bringing back Jamal Adams.
Matt, I agree. And not all of me wants to. Because, look, I like Andre Cisco as a player. Andre Cisco, you definitely take over Jamal Adams at this time. But he's not a guarantee to work out. He's on a one-year contract. It's not like the Jets have a ton of responsibility to him. So having interest in Jamal Adams, even if he were someone who wasn't necessarily even going to be on the field that much, it goes one of two ways. Is Jamal Adams going to be able to be a veteran leader, and is Aaron Glenn okay with that, or does he not want to do that? As you mentioned, and he wants to be that veteran leader, defensive back in the locker room. Look, there's a lot of reasons to like or not like Jamal Adams. The way he left was not the right way to go about it. It was an ugly end to what over the first 3 years was a very fun experience with a player for Jets fans. The relationship between Adams and the front office, led at the time by former general manager Joe Douglas, fell apart when Adams went public with his dissatisfaction and requested a trade in June of 2020. A month later, he was dealt to the Seahawks for a package that included 2021 and 2022 first-round picks. The Jets parlayed those picks into guard Elijah Vera Tucker and wide receiver Garrett Wilson, respectively. Adams made the Pro Bowl in his first season with the Seahawks and received a 4-year, $70 million contract extension, but the injuries limited him to only 22 games over the next 3 years, and he was released. Now, Adams even spoke on this, saying his biggest regret is him and Joe Douglas never speaking, saying, "We never spoke on the phone one time. We never spoke in person one time before this trade happened." And that's where I wish we could have that back. Because I can't speak for him, but I didn't go about that the right way at the time. So, Matt, clearly, and this happens in sports in a general sense, players, they sometimes request trades or do something that they'll later walk back and say, look, at the time I was younger, I was on an unsuccessful team. The biggest correlation I can make is to the New York Knicks when Kristaps Porzingis left, and has openly talked about the fact that, look, that was gone about the wrong way, and I understand that now at the time, but I was much younger, I was in a position where, for Jamal Adams, he had never in his life been in a position where he wasn't on a successful football team. LSU was great when he was there, so he goes to the Jets, this team that had been losing for a while, and he was playing well enough to where he's like, this is getting frustrating for me. I feel like there's nothing else I can do at this point, and Adams just compartmentalized that the wrong way, and here we are.
Yeah, so his apology, while it is admirable, he's saying all the right things, it can't change the front office's ideas or plans on whether they want to bring this player back or not. Because yes, he is saying the right things, and it does show growth, because we remember what was a fiery competitor, but just a little bit, just like you said, he was a little bit younger. I don't want to call him immature. That's the number I'm trying to, that's the word I'm kind of trying to stay away from. But, whatever is a little bit more than immature, but not like correct. Like, he is grown up from where he used to be, where he was in this state of mind where everything had to be perfect. He realizes now that when you're a professional, not everything's going to be perfect, but you have to make sure you are remaining as professional as possible. And I'm sure a lot of that comes from not only him getting older, but the fact that teams don't want him right now. If he was a highly valued free agent, he would already be on a team at this point on May 19th. So he would be picked up if he was viewed as a higher quality player. This situation reminds me a little bit of Tyron Smith, where if the Jets signed Jamal Adams now, it kind of would feel like we were the only team who wanted Jamal Adams. And we know that's not the way you want to go, because when someone is a good player, they're going to have multiple suitors. The players with only one option for a team, usually they don't turn into the best of players. But you might want to counter argue in that and say, we don't need the best player. We just need a leader in the locker room, and we need depth at safety. And if that's your argument, if that's where you're coming from, I can completely understand it. Just don't think this is the right move for this team.
I agree, and I think it also just goes back to the people over players thing. Jamal Adams does not have a great history with the Jets, and that's just going to come into mind, especially for a guy like Aaron Glenn, who very early on to his NFL career, the man found himself on a terrible Jets team that won, 1-2 games? So you look at that and you start to think about the fact that he didn't complain, and given things got turned around faster, but it still happened. And that's something that you do have to consider. And I think Glenn is going to consider it. So even though Rich Cimini does mention this, that Glenn is familiar with Adams, who spent 1 month on the Lions roster end of last season. He started 2 games for the Lions, decimated by injuries, but was released before the end of the regular season. Glenn was the Lions' defensive coordinator, as we know. So, Matt, just in this whole situation, it feels like there's a world where this could have worked. It feels like that world was last offseason. And I know Joe Douglas was still there, but still, if Adams went to Joe Douglas and was like, I regret that we didn't talk about this face-to-face, that was the mistake we made, and I will take responsibility for that. Joe Douglas, trying to put together as good of a football team as possible, likely would have welcomed Jamal Adams back. So it just feels like it's the wrong year and the wrong personnel for Jamal Adams to try to return to the New York Jets.
I'm sure Joe Douglas would have been more receptive to Jamal Adams. And I'm also sure last year Woody Johnson would have swung his all-powerful owner hammer and said, we're picking up Jamal Adams. Because Jamal Adams pretty much represents everything that Woody Johnson's looking for, which is off the field distractions, big names, just media, social media stuff happening, more excitement and energy around the Jets, even if it's not the right type of energy. I really want to just say, I'm not trying to talk badly about Jamal Adams. Definitely have respect for him as a player. This sounds really stupid, and it is a quote pretty much from Impractical Jokers, but it's just not the right energy for us right now.
I agree, especially with Aaron Glenn being very adamant that he wants no distractions in this locker room. This does not feel like the situation that Adams would come back for. Though, in another world, it would have been nice to see. And you never know what could happen in the future. You never know if Jamal is going to find his way to another team, whether it's the Jets or not. Maybe be able to have a bit of a career resurgence. And if he still wants to and says that I want to be a veteran leader for this team, there's a world where they come around. It's just a matter of, at the same time, Matt, as you sort of mentioned earlier, if he was a sought-after free agent, he would be signed right now. Is he saying this to get back in the NFL? It's what teams are going to wonder. I'll go out and say I believe Jamal Adams. I really do. Teams are not always going to be receptive to that because we're not the ones signing him to millions of dollars. I know that Woody doesn't care, but Mougey will. And
I think both things can be right. He has matured and he has grown up and he does understand that his role isn't going to be as a starter and that he has to be a leader in the locker room and he has to be more mature than he used to be. But at the same time, I agree with you, or I don't know if you're making this point, but I do think he's saying this to try to get back in the NFL. I do think he feels like he's worried that he's not going to get signed to a team and he wants to make sure that he gets signed. Now, once rosters balloon into somewhere in the 90s for training camp, he's definitely going to find a spot should he want a spot and want to grind it out, which, knowing the type of person he is, I'm sure he will. I'm sure he is going to try to fight in a training camp. But, he's a human being. He wants to have a little bit of a sense of security. He wants to know where it is so he can start making plans and hopefully start to make a good impression on his coaches early. But I do think he's just saying something like this to try to get back in the NFL. And it's not impossible that the Jets sign him, but highly unlikely.
I think this season it's pretty hard to imagine unless something were to happen with Andre Cisco personally. But we'll see how all that goes down and much more. Guys, make sure to subscribe to Jets Digest for a bunch of great videos. Like this video, turn on post notifications, have a great day, and go Jets.